Number 10. Vander and Dr. Reveck. So in episode 4, while Savika is trying to pull Zahn together to form some kind of resistance against Piltover, we see that Dr. Reveck is amongst the crowd watching this crappy speech. Now, why is Reveck at this rally? Why would this character be interested, or even care about what's happening with Zahn? We see later on in this season that this guy has no apparent loyalties to anyone unless they're assisting him in his research. Dr. Reveck is completely willing to help end the world if it somehow helps him in his goal to save his daughter. So he's not watching Savika's speech because he's moved by what's being said, or her cries for inequality. He doesn't really care what happens to anyone, really. Why was he out of his laboratory in the first place? Was he just passing by and saw the rally and decided to check it out?
Because I want to fit in.
This is the first time in the show that we actually see Reveck out and around. So was he out grocery shopping? Was he just going for a stroll? I mean, this guy doesn't strike me as someone who does anything besides tinker in his creepy lab trying to create new and horrible experiments. So it's pretty strange for him to be randomly attending a rally that he neither cares about or has a reason to be there. Now you may think that this is a small problem, but it speaks to a larger issue in the writing here. A character who acts without purpose feels more like a puppet to the writers rather than a developed person with their own autonomy. A mark of good writing is the ability to make the audience feel like the characters they're watching have a will of their own. The more you can convince a viewer that these are real people, the more likely they are to get fully immersed in the narrative. Having moments like this weakens the immersion because it makes the audience stop to question why characters are doing something that is not in their established nature. Even if the audience doesn't actively stumble over this, it still happens on a subconscious level. Reveck has no reason to be in this scene besides the fact that the writers wanted to have a convenient reason for him to be arrested and taken to Stillwater. Now some of you may think that this isn't a big deal, that having a plot convenience like this shouldn't matter. So what if the beginning of the story is a little janky? It doesn't affect how awesome the rest of it is, right?
Wrong!
If you mess something up at the beginning of a plotline, like having Reveck be at a rally for no fucking reason, then that means that the rest of the plot hinges on stupidity. No matter how compelling you think the story might be, it's ultimately poisoned because all of the following situations spawned out of something that makes no goddamn sense. In other words, making mistakes like this, no matter how small, lessens the overall story. So even if you like moments like this, or this, or this, you have to accept that they only took place because Reveck just happened to be at this rally. I mean, if he had not been there at all, then all of these moments wouldn't have happened. Whether you know it or not, people like having tightly written stories with characters that act in a consistent pattern. It gives them purpose. And without purpose, things are just happening without any structure. And that's not a story. That's just a bunch of random shit happening. So as Reveck is being arrested by enforcers, he cuts his hand open, which awakens the werewolf Vander. Reveck's plan seems to be that once he is taken to Stillwater, Vander will come and kill all the enforcers so Reveck can escape.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
Alright, we already have to stop again and ask questions that point out how fucking dumb this all is. As soon as the enforcers approach Reveck, he pulls out a knife and cuts his hand open. Knowing that this would summon the most dangerous creature in the entire city, and that this creature would certainly come to kill anyone in the vicinity. Isn't this a horrible and idiotic plan? I mean, what are you gonna do once Vander finds you?
Not a great plan.
I mean, it seems like he wants to kill you really badly, as just one drop of your blood makes him go feral enough to track you across the entire city. So what are you gonna do once he shows up? Sure, this monster will annihilate all of the guards watching you, but then he'll kill you as well. Now we see later on in the episode that once Vander does show up, Reveck closes his cell in order to protect himself against this insane monster. But what was the plan if he wasn't in this cell? When Reveck initially cuts open his hand, he has no idea where he'll be taken and how long it's going to take to get there. What if the enforcers didn't end up putting Reveck in a prison cell? What if Vander got to him faster than Reveck had anticipated? It's pretty convenient that Vander doesn't track Reveck down until he's been sent to prison and put behind a big metal door. But even though this plan works out as well as it could have, Reveck still doesn't even try to escape. He instead locks himself inside a cell rather than trying to make a break for it. So what was the point? Why would Reveck call on Vander if in doing so, he puts his own life at risk? Had Jinx not been there to awaken Vander's buried personality, then wouldn't Reveck have been killed like everyone else in the prison? We also find out later on in the season that Vander is the key to Reveck's research and finding some cure for his daughter.
Everything I've done is to cure her. I believe the beast may hold the final key.
So not only is this plan risking his own life, but his daughter's life as well. While yes, Vander is difficult to kill, it's not impossible for it to happen. So even though it's unlikely that Vander could be killed, is it really worth the risk if the entirety of your research is based around this one guy? At the very least, there's still a good chance that Vander would go rogue and run around Piltover slaughtering people, which is essentially what ends up happening. Letting Vander escape is in no way beneficial for Reveck. He is both highly valuable to Reveck's research, as well as completely unreliable for this plan to really work. There are simply too many ways for all of this to blow up in Dr. Reveck's face. It's pretty unbelievable that a character this intelligent and calculated would think that this is in any way a good idea. Also, the rules around the whole blood thing are pretty vague. And when I say vague, I mean they're not explained at all.
Why don't you explain this to me like I am an 8-year-old?
So Reveck can call Vander from across the city with just a single drop of his blood. We see that Vander is in some kind of sleeping stasis before this, but is awakened as soon as Reveck's blood hits the ground. Isn't this potentially the most dangerous and stupid thing ever? I mean, Vander is in the center of Reveck's laboratory. What if Reveck was just poking around his laboratory one day and cuts his thumb open or something? What would happen then? It's pretty likely that Vander would break free in about a millisecond and rip Reveck's head off.
Not a great plan.
I don't know about you, but this doesn't look like a safe work environment to me. There are plenty of hazardous things around here that could draw at least one drop of blood. Like, at no point did Reveck think that it was at least a good idea to restrain the giant werewolf. Just have him hang in there on some old meat hooks in the laboratory. That'll be fine. It's like Dr. Reveck had read the script and knew at some point that he'd be arrested by enforcers and would need to be broken out of prison. So he left Vander in a position where he could easily escape from his secret laboratory. How convenient. I mean, we're also assuming that it's Dr. Reveck's blood specifically that summons Vander, right? It's not like anyone's blood can do this. While later on in the tunnels, we see that Isha's blood also causes Vander to go feral. I mean, here he gets one whiff and tries to kill his two daughters. So it has at least a strong effect on him. So how did this not distract Vander while he was tracking Reveck through Piltover? This is a city, after all, with a large population. There must be someone bleeding at any given moment. Wouldn't that draw Vander's attention away from Reveck? There was just a huge fight between the Zonites and the Enforcers. Surely there was some major blood spilled here. Wouldn't that make Vander go feral and run to the closest source? Now, some people are saying that Reveck actually draws some kind of rune on his hand here that is a part of the special summons that brings Vander to him. While that is interesting and would give more credence to the idea of Reveck's blood somehow being more special to Vander, however, it still draws attention to the fundamental flaw of the story. Nothing is explained. We don't have a solid understanding of the rules surrounding any of this shit. The only thing that is apparently obvious is that things are just happening. And the more you stop to ask yourself questions, the more you realize that this is just a pile of uninspired crap masquerading as television.
That is one big pile of shit.
Okay, so anyway, Vander tracks Reveck to the prison. He manages to cut his way through Ambessa and her personal guard, as well as every enforcer in Stillwater. Here, he is confronted by Jinx. The two fight for a bit until Vander finally gets the upper hand, and just before he's about to kill her, he realizes that she's powder. This brings back his humanity, and the scene cuts to black. Now, what happens directly after this plays out off-screen and is only vaguely explained in passing by Jinx. But apparently Vander runs away and escapes into this mining tunnel underneath Piltover. Alright, so even though we have barely moved forward in the plot, again, allow me to pick this apart and point out how none of this makes a lick of sense. The first question that comes to mind while reviewing these unseen events is, how the fuck did Vander get off the island? We are clearly shown that the only way to get out of Stillwater is by cable car. We see Jinx use it when she gets onto the island, and we see Mbessa waiting for the cable car when she's preparing to leave. If Vander used the cable car, then wouldn't he have needed to get by Mbessa again in order to use it? Which we know didn't happen because he definitely would have killed her. Actually, how did he manage to operate the cable car the first time? He doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy to have the mental clarity needed in order to operate even basic machinery. Nor does he seem like he has the physical ability to do it either. He gives off more of a slashing and clawing kind of monster rather than a pressing buttons and pulling levers kind of monster. It's also pretty convenient that Vander doesn't kill Mbessa when he kills anyone else that puts up even a little bit of resistance. Well, it happened off screen, so I guess it's okay.
Right.
So without any ability to operate a cable car that is necessary to get on and off the island, Vander still manages to escape. I mean, did he swim? I guess he could have done that, but later on Jinx tells Vi that she had tracked him into the tunnels. So that means that she would have also had to swim and somehow track him through the city. On a side note, there's the same issue with the Zonites that Jinx had freed from the prison. They would have also needed to pass by Mbessa to use the cable car to escape before the enforcers showed up. How did they get off the island? Is there some abundance of rafts or canoes hanging around the super secure prison for people just to escape on? And shout out to this guy for pointing this out to me, you're a true fan. So how did Vander escape? Just cut to black, we don't need to explain it. How did the prisoners get off the island? Cut to black again, nobody will even think about it. How did Mbessa survive her encounter with Vander? Well, how about we cut to the next scene so the audience doesn't have time to digest the shitty script? So after the breakout, Reveck is the only one left in the prison because his idiotic plan of being broken out by a bloodthirsty rage monster didn't work. It is here that Caitlyn and Mbessa interrogate him about his knowledge of Vander and Jinx.
Patience is a product of age, both of which I possess in abundance.
Wait, what? Dr. Reveck doesn't have time in abundance? Is this some kind of bluff? He has a daughter in some kind of stasis tank that needs to be filtered out. Why is Dr. Reveck acting all calm and relaxed here when he's already revealed how badly he wants to get out of this prison? He immediately called a fucking werewolf to Stillwater as soon as he got captured. It would be quite obvious to anyone that this guy needs to get out of this jail for some reason. Reveck could still share some information with Caitlyn. After all, it's only Jinx that Caitlyn really cares about. And Reveck has no reason to lie or hide any information about her. He was quite willing to let Jinx die a second ago, and she is the reason he is horribly disfigured.
Oh, this coffee smells like shit.
Now some people claim that this is all a part of Dr. Reveck's big scheme. The theory goes is that from everything from getting caught to summoning Vander and having him come to Stillwater is just a demonstration of his scientific prowess. Reveck has planned this all out in order to impress Mbessa and win her favor. Without Silco, there is nobody there to help fund Reveck's research, so he's looking for someone to sponsor him again. And Mbessa is a good candidate for this.
I will supply all your needs. You will be treated as an esteemed advisor, but I demand absolute loyalty.
However, there are so many ways for this plan to go wrong that again, it would be idiotic for Reveck to even try it. What if Vander killed Mbessa on the platform? What if characters like Caitlyn were consistent and would never approve of a guy like Dr. Reveck working for Piltover? Again, we can sit here all day and theorize about what these characters were thinking and what their motivations are. However, we would be putting more time and effort into these ideas than the writers ever did.
What the fuck is this world? What have they done to us? What did they do to us?
While this is going on, Jinx and Vi manage to calm Vander down and finally reunite their family. Afterwards, Victor agrees to help fix Vander's psyche so he can stop being a scary werewolf monster. Over the course of the episode, we are treated to a couple of heartwarming montages where we get a glimpse into Vander's troubled mind, and by the end of the episode, it seems that Victor is able to return him to some level of control. It is right after this victory is established that the whole thing gets pulled out from underneath the audience as Jace tries to kill Victor. This causes all of Victor's followers to die, I guess? Which in turn kills Vander's human side, leaving only the evil monster persona. So this makes him turn into an evil lava werewolf that tries to kill everyone. So Isha sacrifices herself to kill him. Well, I can see why people fell for this easy emotional baiting. The writers took one of the most moral and well-regarded characters in the entire story, tortured him, and turned him into a bloodthirsty wolf hybrid, where his only cure was the love for his children, and as soon as his family was reunited and made whole, they kill both him and the poster child for the show. I mean, you would have to be pretty heartless if this didn't at least bring a tear to your eye, right?
No, 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 no.
Like Isha, Vander is only in the story to elicit a hysterical emotion from the audience when he dies. Everything in their character designs are built around this effect. They give us these gushy scenes where Vander is being reunited with Jinx and Vi. We see a growing bond between him and Isha, and it's all nice and heartwarming. It's everything that the audience could have hoped for these characters, really. I mean, you could almost call it fan service. Not that kind of fan service, I mean this kind of fan service. Of course, it's natural for we as the audience to want all of this pain undone for all of our favorite characters. They've all been through terrible struggles. So it's very compelling to have them overcome all of these issues to be brought together once again. The writers were very aware of this, and it becomes very obvious once you realize how rushed it all was. Over the course of 3 episodes, we see a legacy character get brought back to life, is then brought together with his loved ones, and is then killed off. After this, Vander is once again resurrected by Victor and turned into this mindless drone for his army. So what's the lesson we were supposed to learn from this? By playing into the meme that this scene has become, the writers have failed to realize the lasting consequences of this decision. None of these choices were Vander's to make. He is a complete victim of the storytelling here. So the punishment of his character is completely unjustified and unfulfilling. To top all of this off, the guy who is responsible for all of Vander's pain and suffering ends up getting one of the best conclusions to the story. Reveck saves his daughter and seems to be living in complete happiness with her. There's no payback or punishment for all of the horrible crimes he has committed. We never see Vander get his revenge on the person that turned him into an evil monster. We get nothing. Now, of course, this isn't the first time we have seen a monster character like this before. Some obvious comparisons would be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as well as the Hulk, Frankenstein's monster, and pretty much any story that includes a werewolf. However, despite being victims of having monstrous personas that they have to grapple with, these characters have much more agency in their stories. Instead of simply being tossed around from one miserable situation to another, they actually make choices that impact both their own character as well as the plot. The Incredible Hulk is a good example of how to write a character like this. The entire plot of the film revolves around Bruce Banner grappling with being the Hulk while also trying to find an antidote for his transformations. The movie does a good job of showing us how the Hulk negatively impacts Bruce's life and his relationships with other people. We see him try different methods to control his anger, as well as find a peaceful existence while being hunted by the US government. After finally finding a cure, a new threat arrives in the form of the Abomination, a monster even more dangerous than the Hulk. Bruce is then faced with a decision to throw away his newfound cure and turn into the Hulk to save the people of New York, or to leave and continue his life with Betty, the woman he loves. In the end, he chooses to become the monster once again to save innocent people. This is very compelling because Bruce must choose to sacrifice his own happiness for the greater good. This gives Bruce Banner a satisfying arc that reveals the values of his character and gives us a bittersweet payoff to all the themes set up in the story. But it's this choice that makes it compelling. Bruce Banner isn't some beaten puppy who has all of his decisions ripped out of his hands and made the pathetic victim of the plot. He's a character that makes an impact on the story with his decisions. Vander, on the other hand, makes no decisions and is constantly being affected by situations completely outside of his control. This stagnates his character development as the story strips him of all agency. Had they given us more time with the character instead of these 3 episodes that tell a half-baked story that leaves us in a state of complete disappointment? And all of these events take place because Dr. Reveck just so happened to be at a rally without a reason or purpose to be there.